So last year, I reviewed the beta set for a cyberpunk-themed trading card game called Neuroscape, an attempt to expand on the Netrunner card game that came across as rather half-baked. It included a hard-coded health system that quashed variety and one of the most anti-fun mechanics I have ever seen in a game, made worse by the fact that it's the main gimmick of one of the factions. And by the end of that video, I could not bring myself to recommend it. But this review actually wound up opening a few doors for me, specifically with the official Cyberpunk brand made by CD Projekt Red.
In 2077, what makes someone a criminal? Getting caught.
As usual, a bit of history. The term cyberpunk has actually been a thing for quite a long time. There even has already been a trading card game called Cyberpunk about 20 years ago back in the Wild West era. Cyberpunk is a genre of fiction that includes various dystopic future stories like Blade Runner, Deus Ex, and Ghost in the Shell. Terrifying urban settings where technology has been forced into every aspect of our lives, even our own bodies, and wealth inequality is worse than ever, where crime is practically a necessity to make ends meet. It is a horrifying dead end for humanity, or as certain idiotic billionaires call it, aspirational. For Pete's sake, man, anybody who wishes the future looked more like Blade Runner clearly missed the point of that entire story. The world of Cyberpunk was recently brought back into wider attention through the Cyberpunk 2077 video game created by CD Projekt Red, the people behind the Witcher games. Cyberpunk 2077 was a game sold on Keanu memes and which was famously a horrific train wreck on launch, and it likely would have been relegated to the bargain bin of history if not for the strength of its aesthetic and the release of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, brought to us by the Gurren Lagann Kill la Kill brand new animal people, Studio Trigger. Taking place in Night City as a prequel to the video game, it's a story about a group of broken people who get even more broken by the city that breaks people. The success of Edgerunners opened up a second chance for the Cyberpunk 2077 game, which by then had gone through a round of aggressive revisions and patching and was actually kinda good now. It's a rare case where an anime actually improves the image of a video game beyond what it had before, something that previously only Ufotable seemed capable of. So it turned out that there are 2 official card games being made for Cyberpunk that I have gotten to try out. One of them, Cyberpunk Legends Into the Night, is a cooperative game where you and several players work together to try to solve a scenario by combining the cards in your individual hands. It was fun, though the game does expect you to be coy with what cards you are holding. Got successfully crowdfunded last year, good for it! The year before that, there was an Edgerunners tabletop role-playing game where I got a sample dice that had a 0 and a 7 in place of a 4 or a 6. Or I said 0, it's actually blank. Kind of a waste, honestly. If there was a 0, then you could line up 4 of them to make the 2077 logo. Really love how this dice is designed to have a high risk and high reward, and oh wait. This is a 4, isn't it? Not a 7. Darn, and here I thought they'd come up with something clever and thematic. But now today, we have the official Cyberpunk trading card game. As you can see, they have sent me this lovely little preview box complete with... oh.
What am I supposed to do with this part? I don't know, let me check the rules. Oops.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be a genuine Cyberpunk 2077 experience without some kind of major flaw, right? At least this isn't the only copy of the rules, as we also get a set of turn order cards in each of the decks as well. In the Cyberpunk trading card game, players put agents into play by paying for them with resource cards which consist of any card from their hand, using attackers and blockers to try to attack a handful of things under your opponent's control and...
Yet another Duel Masters clone, not a...
Yeah, it's another one, I know, but do they at least do something interesting with it? Well, kinda. The win condition is unique at least. Unlike so many games of this particular ilk, where the goal is to reduce your opponent's life points to 0 or be the first to cross a finish line, instead in Cyberpunk, you and your opponent are fighting over the last donut in the break room, if that makes any sense. So another thing that came in this box was a couple sets of polyhedral dice, basically one of each of your typical Dungeons & Dragons dice minus the percentile dice. And before we go any further, yes, I did ask this question, you are allowed to use any set of polyhedral dice you have as long as you remove any duplicates in the percentile dice. We're not gonna have any of that Bushiroad with their Dragonborn nonsense here. These dice are known as gigs and start the game in the fixer pile. On the start of your turn, you get to pick any one die, except for the d20, unless that's the last one, and roll it. This sets the gig's value and adds that gig to your own stash. The goal of the game is to steal your opponent's gigs, or more accurately, you win the game by starting your turn with 6 gigs already in your gig area, or by being the first player to 7 gigs once all 12 gigs have entered play. Now if only this game came with a way to let me randomly choose who could go first. Well, guess I'll flip a coin. So, rather than trying to knock down a player, Cyberpunk is instead a tug of war to have the best jobs and the most street cred. This has the effect of generating a back and forth as well as creating a hard minimum of 4 turns, since the player only adds 1 gig at a time, so there won't even be 6 gigs in play until that time happens, so no first turn kills allowed. It also caps the game at roughly 8 turns, since the game moves on to sudden death once every gig is in play. It also makes use of an increasingly popular mechanic that I am going to call holding the pin, where the win condition is checked at the start of the turn rather than at the end of it. It's just like with wrestling. You don't win the moment your opponent's shoulders hit the mat, you gotta hold them for the full 3 count, giving your opponent a chance to break the pin. The idea behind holding the pin is that a truly lopsided match can be allowed to just end, while a close game can remain tense. The addition of a sudden death mechanic is nice too. No stalemate death spirals like you get in Riftbound, and you might actually be able to finish a best of 3 in the allotted time. Ain't that amazing? Of course, this also means that the game can move really quickly. Not a lot of space to have any turns that are just play, land, and pass, but that's where Cyberpunk adds a twist to another up-and-coming mechanic. So a few other games, such as Altered and Star Wars Unlimited, have you start the game with a couple of resource cards already in play. The downside is that those cards usually come out of your hand, often reducing it pitifully. Star Wars Unlimited starts you with a hand of 4, and Altered with just 3. So what is Cyberpunk's answer to this? Well, first, why don't we take a step back and look into deck building? So, like games such as Star Wars Unlimited, there is a mechanic that limits the color choices in your deck. But unlike games like Lorcana or the Gundam card game, your colors aren't determined by the honor system. To start deck building, you pick 3 legend cards, which you can tell because they actually have a different color of back from the rest of the cards out there. Very nice and very helpful. Each of these legends has an amount of colored RAM that they contribute and some sort of passive effect. Cards can only be added to your deck if, among all the legends you control, their RAM totals add up to have enough of the specific color of the card demanded. And I gotta say, this opens up the game to a lot of potential. One thing I like about the designs of these legend cards is that, so far, all of the ones I've been given provide 2 RAM of 1 color, and yes, there are cards with odd-numbered RAM requirements in these decks. This means that it can be possible that, in the future, we will get legend cards that mess with this. Maybe a vanilla legend worth 3 RAM, or a card with a strong passive worth just 1. We can also have cards that demand multiple colors of RAM in order to be added to the deck in order to have some strong archetypal themes. You see, this is what a well-designed card mechanic looks like. If you wonder why I'm not a fan of all of these games that have stacks of generic resources and build their color template based on the honor system or some kind of hard limit, it's that they lack this sort of potential to grow and evolve. But how does this tie back into the resource system? Well, at the start of the game, you flip your 3 legend cards face down, shuffle them up, and move them into your resource row as your 3 starting resources. And you still get a full hand of 6 cards to boot. Yeah, this game starts off like a high-speed chase. We're going wild and chucking haymakers from the get-go. We're popping out of the sunroof to shoot RPGs at the fuzz chasing us while hacking the toll booth to open its gates. The game may be designed to be brief, but it's very clearly just as intense. Now, at any time during your turn, you can pay 2 resources to flip one of your legends face up. This is done at random, however, so you might be playing a quick shell game with your opponent and asking them to pick. Well, unless you use one of those cards that allows you to check one of your face-down legends, but otherwise, even after a legend card gets flipped, they can still act as resources that you can use to pay for effects while providing some kind of bonus effect, which might be a passive buff or the ability to jump into the fray themselves as some extra late-game muscle. Otherwise, things are pretty standard. Attacking either sends you at an opponent's spent/exhausted character or to one of their gigs to try to steal it. And to compensate with that, we have the blocker mechanic, seen in so many of these games, highest power wins. The only real mercy here is that a rush strategy is kind of impossible with the slow drip feed of the victory condition. Now, what is it about these gigs? Why are they dice? Why do we roll them when we have them enter play? Why are they different sizes? And why do you roll the D20 last? This is because the number on the gig is its value, and this value affects your street cred, which is the total value of all of your gigs. Several of the cards in these demo decks make a check for street cred, usually at least 7 or as much as 20, to activate bonus effects. This means that getting a high roll on your gigs can be a blessing as well as a curse, because those high value gigs are the obvious first target for your opponent to steal. But that's not the only way gigs can get checked. I actually know some of the people who worked on this game, and they said to expect a lot more mechanics that mess with gigs in the future, like characters who want to control specific dice, like the D6s or the D8s or the like. So, with a little expansion, we can have decks that work their own angle on obtaining gigs. Like, I might see Rebecca from the Edgerunners anime as having an aggro deck that wants to have as low a street cred as possible for her effects to work. Although, that does kind of remind me, I'm a little surprised that they didn't go with the Edgerunners anime for their opening set, considering that it is widely accepted as the force that salvaged the franchise. Well, if the Lucy promo they're showing off on their Kickstarter is any indication, then it seems that Edgerunners can't be far off. Probably set 2, hopefully. I guess it was done this way to avoid confusing people into thinking that it's only Cyberpunk Edgerunners the anime the card game, though I kinda wish this Lucy card more embraced the Trigger style, to be honest. As for the decks themselves, they actually don't strike me as particularly standout. It's a group of mercenaries against the Arasaka Zaibatsu, and as for this promo card, I mean, what is it with modern video games and giving Japanese gangsters the name Goro? Insert Dr. Doofenshmirtz joke here, I guess. The decks are built roughly the same, with just about the same spread of cards and even identical blockers and 3-cost attackers, with a few different types of disruption in both. Of the two decks, the Arasaka deck seems to have a bit more brute force and synergy. The big trick for the Mercs, on the other hand, is a legend that lets them delve into the deck for equipment cards, half of which merely have the effect of letting you check your face-down legends to see if you can find his effect in the first place. So, I mean, I get the idea of wanting the decks to be fairly similar for each player, but part of the fun of these sorts of trial sets, at least to me, is to get a taste of what makes each faction unique. You know, play a round, swap decks, play another round, something that this game is designed to enable since it has such a hard turn limit. Both decks have a few tricks here and there to at least get a glimpse of how some of the playing around works, such as multiple cards that let you mess with gig values by ticking them up or down, but aside from Arasaka loyalty, I didn't really see much in the way of unifying themes and distinct gimmicks. Hopefully we get more cool stuff like that once more cards become available. Gonna say, any reveals that they do during the Kickstarter will need to have some nice punch to them. Show me the depth! I've been told it's there, let me see it! So, yeah, at the end of the day, Cyberpunk is another one. Another game that copies a lot of the most annoyingly common game mechanics I've gotten tired of, but at least the new stuff is actually, you know, new? The way players fight over the win condition in ways that I am told will eventually diversify, the way that your starting resources don't eat into your starting hand and can be used to give your deck even more identity rather than less of one. If you're trying to remix the old formulas, this is kinda how you do it, and it's often how I judge these sorts of games. How similar are they to the games that already exist, and do they offer an experience that those don't? Here, at least, it does seem to try to capture the idea of a frantic grasping while sabotaging those around you. What I hope to see is that as we get introduced to more characters, more factions, more methodologies, we see all sorts of different things. And hopefully we can see this game like create its own characters and narratives. Like, Night City's a big place. Surely there's a way that the trading card game can get its own story. Maybe something involving, you know, like a casino or something with like cards and dice and all that stuff like we get in the box here. Like, could you imagine like a gambler character that wants to have both of your D6s in play and actually like rolls them for some kind of bonus effect, and maybe escaping the usual sorts of trappings that these games get stuck in? The Kickstarter kicks off in mid-March, and we'll have to see where it goes. It already has a lot of support, and so far I've yet to see any of these major Cyberpunk licensed games fail, and they've all been great, so Hopefully this will be another one of them. Until next time, this is Kohdok signing off.